And good morning and grand rising to you all, you wonderful, wonderful people. It's Monday, the 24th of February, 2025. It is exactly 9 a.m. GMT. Yo, 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 fam, says Soul Sound. And good morning, first of all, of course, to my two wonderful mods, Crazy Bunny and Soul Sound. And good morning to you all in the house. How are you all? Grand risings to you all. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests, the show that is unapologetically and unashamedly in your face. Take that. Yes, I'm still catching up with my emails. Please forgive me if you sent me an email over the last month and have not received a response. That is simply an oversight. Please forgive me. Forgive me. Feel free to send it again. And welcome, as I say, to Wake Up. And congratulations to Grace. She is our competition winner for Lisa Morgan's fabulous book, The Real Woo, Seeing Beyond Identity. Thank you all for entering. So many entries and so many wonderful, wonderful messages. Truly appreciate you. Keep entering our competitions. One day it could be you. And what's on Wake Up? Well, this week, British PM Keir Starmer, I was just going to call him Keith. Keir Starmer is to meet Trump, and that's after the president has cussed the British Prime Minister publicly for failing to do anything to stop the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And fake Maddie actor Julia Wandelt appeared in court on Friday, charged with 4 counts and remanded. And I'll be joined at 9:10 by geopolitical journalist Warren Thornton. He'll be helping us understand the geopolitical landscape from the German elections yesterday to the meeting with Trump and Starmer to what is going on in Ukraine and more. About 9:30, I'll be joined by government whistleblower Terry Edge, who will be talking to me about the corruption of Grenfell. And at 10 a.m., I'll be joined by campaigner Jean HATCHET, who will be talking us through an Afghan cricket protest. It's great to hear it. I want to also reflect on the time a 16-year-old girl became a page 3 model and what it says about our society. And what else? Apple encryption. They finally lost me, people. They finally lost me. I sit on here week in, week out, going on about what an Apple fan I am. They've gone too far. And I need a new phone, and I will not be buying an iPhone. Oh, no, I won't. And what else? Diddy's lawyer has quit. There is the data use and access bill. And I see more international baby purchasing has taken place as OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and his gay partner have bought a baby via surrogacy. I will never stop saying that surrogacy is wrong. And I will never stop being alarmed by 2 men purchasing boys from essentially strangers. Are we all okay with this? Are we? I don't care what anybody calls me for saying that. There's something very, very wrong. So many public men are purchasing baby boys via surrogates. Don't they like girls? There's a few. There's a few, including Anderson Cooper, TV presenter, Dave Rubin. Who else? Benjamin Cohen, Pink News editor, and more. It's wrong. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And that is just me. And I also don't like Keir Starmer. The ultimate home wrecker has announced free school breakfast clubs for children. We're opening free breakfast clubs in all primary schools to boost parents' work choices and children's life chances. 750 schools are becoming the first today to offer the club set to save parents £450 a year, says the Department for Education. This is simply state intervention. The government doesn't care about parents and children or life choices or anything else like that. This is simply making the state a parent of your child. Children need less time in school, not more, in my opinion. 100%. And interesting to see that it's now 10 police officers are now being investigated over claims they abused children in Rotherham in the north of England. That, of course, is a sort of central hub for grooming gangs. And we know that police and other authorities have been complicit in this for a very, very long time. And what else? Oh, Luigi Mangione appeared in court and on Friday, and his supporters love him. Look at these placards that were outside. Luigi freed us, death by claim denial. Health insurance practices terrorize people. Luigi Mangione, of course, is the man accused of murdering UnitedHealthCare boss Brian Thompson. Mangione's lawyer gave a press statement outside, and it was quite shocking, actually, the statement she gave. She said that she was learning about her client's case from an HBO documentary because the police weren't sharing evidence with her. What? And she said that the state is still considering whether to execute Luigi Mangione and whether they should be seeking the death penalty. And she said that they are behaving completely differently to him in public than they are behind closed doors. Here she is, Karen Friedman Agnifilio, and she's Luigi Mangione's attorney. And the images below is of Luigi entering court, and you can see under the desk that he's shackled. And she said, none of that makes sense. She said when she visits him in prison, he's in the same prison as Sean Diddy Combs in Brooklyn. But she said when she visits her client in prison, he walks around, he's free, he's unshackled. She said, and then suddenly all this big public stuff of him with a bulletproof vest on, him being shackled, completely surrounded by officers. And she said, there's something wrong about it. She said he's being treated different because and also on top of that, the way they are showing him publicly, but he's also being prosecuted by 3 jurisdictions for essentially one event. She said she made a record of that in court today. And she said, what's this show of danger for? She said, when I visit him, it's nothing like this. And he's alleged to have had a gun with him in the images that we've seen, although many people dispute that the images that we've seen of somebody shooting Brian Thompson is actually not Luigi Mangione. And so it's interesting. And but what is also interesting is that Luigi Mangione did not even know about evidence against him and did not receive it until the day in court. That's fairly outrageous. 10 p.m. in New Zealand. Good morning to you, Frank, or good evening to you, Frank, indeed. Hello from Beckenham. Hello, Sophie, Astra Coach. Good to see you. So dodgy. So dodgy. It was a very brief court appearance. And one of my friends said, I'm really concerned. She said, it would appear that that young man may be facing life in prison, if not indeed the death sentence, for a crime he didn't commit. Many people believe that it's not Luigi Mangione who committed that crime. When's Katie Hopkins on the show, Sonia? Is she, Chris? When's Katie Hopkins? I don't know anything about that, Chris. I don't know anything about that at all. And right, what else? Let me just do this before we bring in our first guest. Fake Madeleine McCann, Julia Wandelt. She was in court on Friday. She appeared in Leicester Magistrates Court on Friday, was remanded until April when she will appear for her pleadings. The 23-year-old is accused of stalking Kate, Jerry, Sean and Amelie McCann, so it's their twins as well, between 3rd of January 2024 and 15th of February 2025. She is alleged to have been at the family home on 2nd of May and 7th of December last year. Madeleine McCann, of course, is the world's most famous missing child that many of us believe never left apartment 5A in Portugal alive. And Julia Wandelt, it turns out, because now the stuff is going to hit the fan, right? I did a piece about it on Friday that I'm not going to repeat. But thank you very much for all of your emails regarding that. Yes, I had to say what I had to say, and I very much appreciate all your support. And if you're uncertain what I'm talking about, please go back and check it. And but obviously now the stuff is going to hit the fan. The truth is really going to come out. And it turns out that Julia Wandelt was actually born in August 2001, and Madeleine was actually born on May the 12th. And I think, was it 2003? They're not even born the same time. It's just ridiculous. And Marcuson is not impressed at all. And at Leicester Magistrates Court, Julia Wandelt spoke to say her full name was Julia Wandelt. According to court documents, gave her date of birth and gave no indication as to her pleas. A second woman, aged 60 from Wales, who was also arrested at Bristol Airport with Julia on suspicion of stalking, has been released on bail. So we shall see. And what I think is sad is it turns out that her Polish parents have now fled their home and gone into hiding because they are now receiving the type of public attention that they never asked for, And some people are like, oh, this poor girl, give her opportunities, test her DNA. She's had plenty of opportunities, as Elaine on Instagram pointed out. She's had many opportunities. He's fueling her delusion. She's talking about Sean Atwood, who's repeatedly, I think he's up to part 15 or 16. So he's absolutely, been very opportunistic about this. And as Elaine has gone on to say, many people as well as Sonia has exposed him, including Sherelle's World, Brian Harvey with Daddygate, criminal profiler Pat Brown, and deception detective, to name a few. And Elaine is no more impressed than I am, which is great to read, frankly. And I don't know if any of you have seen it, but I will put a link in the description, and perhaps my mods could assist me here. And that is yesterday, Only Cans did a live stream. We need to talk about Julia. And indeed we do. It was excellent. And I highly recommend it. Yes, indeed, I do. My first guest will be with me shortly. I sincerely hope so. I can't see him yet. So let's continue. How are you all doing? Julia said, Julia said a million things. Lenticular cloud, a million things. Down the rabbit hole news shouted you out. Oh, okay. I hope it was a good one, because I really hope it was a good one. Right. What am I doing here? Hello. Something like that. She is unwell. And I think that is really part of the problem. And we now know that she has claimed to be at least 3 missing girls. She's a former sex worker. She's registered as an actor. She has a YouTube channel that she's a singer-songwriter. So she's clearly somebody who wants to be acknowledged and recognized. And yeah. Oh, where? Can't see you. Warren's telling me he's here. Yeah, he's telling me he's here, but I can't see you, Warren. Where are you? There he is. He's there. There he is. Wonderful. Warren Thornton. Lovely to have you with us, Warren. Geopolitical journalist Warren Thornton. The madness going on. Warren, I thought there's only one man to unpack this for me this morning. Where do we even start? Can I get your take on the German elections to begin with, which was, of course, yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. We did an exit poll ourselves on the way out, and I think we were 2 seats out. Now the AfD, who are literally have come in on an 8-year package, they're now into their 4th year, and they gained 145 seats. Scholz is completely gone. He gained 118 seats, and the CDU gained 210. The lunatic left gained 60 odd. But of course, this is good news for the people who want to put Germany first. Of course, the moment you want to put your own country first, you're far right, Sonia,
That's right.
as you know.
That's right.
But in some ways, this is also a bad thing. It's a good thing that the AfD can now not be banned because they're the 2nd biggest party in Germany. But the gentleman who will take over is a guy called Merz. Now, he used to work for BlackRock. And of course, he is a huge, huge war hawk. So we've got a major problem. He is much more likely to give the Ukrainians Taurus missiles than Scholz ever was.
It's sort of mad, really. I mean, the AfD, even though they placed 2nd, didn't they, with the 2nd most seats, right? And all the other parties are saying we wouldn't work with them anyway. So there would be no chance of a coalition, would there, straight off the bat? And as you say, as soon as any party wants to put their country first, they're bigots, they're fascists, they're racist, they're far right, you name it. It's kind of insane, isn't it, that we've reached that stage?
It is quite crazy. And of course, with the 2 parties, Scholz's party and also Merz's party, they can join together. And then, of course, once they're joined together, they won't need the Greens, which means that they don't really need the horrible, shall we say, Green Party, which, of course, is, shall we say, very, very naughty with Annalena Baerbock. And, of course, hopefully she will no longer be the foreign minister. But there are rumours that shall we say that Merz is very close to Baerbock? I'll leave it as far as that goes.
Interesting. And what about Zelenskyy? Did you see that extraordinary video where he said, right, maybe I will give up. Maybe it's time now for the better good and everything. There's a clip about it. If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I am ready to do that in exchange for peace. Warren, what happened? Right. Did Trump happen?
He did in a wonderful way, and so did everybody else. Now, very simply, what happened was Zelenskyy had nowhere to go. Zelenskyy is being made ready to be booted out the door. Now, we can say that Poroshenko is a runner, but then again, he was the person who in 2015 turned around and said, "We will make the children of the Donbass hide in cellars while our children go to school." So he's not going to be the president of Ukraine. There is Sersky, who is currently in charge of the military, but of course he is tainted by the fact that is, part and parcel of a losing, and we'll get on to that. But the situation at the front is deteriorating very, very rapidly indeed. Now, the two front runners to replace Zelenskyy, of course, are going to be Klitschko, which is Newland's boy and America's boy, for the simple fact that if you remember when the Maidan was overthrown, Victoria Nuland had a conversation with the American ambassador and said, "Leave Klitschko out. He will be much more useful later on." And of course, UK will be pushing very, very strongly. They'll be pushing Zelenskyy. Now, you have to remember that Zelenskyy was politically a dead man. He was very much up against it because he was the one who was blamed for Nord Stream. He was also the one who was blamed at the start for the loss of the war. Then suddenly he goes to the UK as an ambassador. Suddenly, Phoenix from the ashes is the Ukraine ambassador to the UK, and he'll be very much the UK and the EU and George Soros' boy to put forward. Ooh. So you've got Klitschko with the Americans. Klitschko is the American choice, and of course we've got Zelenskyy, who will be the UK and Soros' choice.
Well, it's very interesting timing, of course, because today marks the 3rd anniversary of the start of the most recent conflict between Ukraine and Russia, 24th of February. And Marco's in the comments saying, "Why is he ready all of a sudden? Pull the other one and stinks of someone being pushed into a corner." Well, Marco, I think so, because what Zelenskyy is saying is he's willing to trade his position in exchange for NATO membership. And go on, Warren. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So very, very simply, Russia have made it and America have made it quite clear. Now, please remember that Zelenskyy is now politically a dead man walking. He actually traveled to Saudi Arabia. He asked the prince through a backdoor channel, and not many people know this, but he asked the prince through a backdoor channel if Russia and America would invite him to the talks, and they both said no. So that he's politically dead in the water. And of course, Europe are having a complete meltdown when Ukraine wasn't the very top of the list. All the other things like getting ambassadors back together, sorting out trade deals and everything else, Ukraine was the very bottom of the list. And of course, everybody was having a meltdown thinking they were going to do a deal. There is not going to be a deal for a long, long way. Russia have not changed their position. No Ukraine in NATO, no peacekeeping troops whatsoever in Ukraine. And we've got this idiotic notion of Starmer's to put 30,000 peacekeepers in Ukraine. He's going to go and see Trump to say to him, "Will you back us if we get into trouble?" Now, please remember, Sonia, that the main idiot here, Starmer, who is quite delusional, of the tanks that we have, 230 Challengers, only 120 of them are left because we've given most of them to Ukraine, which now litter the battlefield. And there is such a thing as Challenger Corner, where so many have been blown up. They've got their own corner of where their rust buckets are now. And of course, we have, how can I put this? The easiest way to put this to you is we have 440 men on horseback. We have 8 times as many men on horseback as we do working tanks.
I mean, it's so extraordinary. You just triggered me to remember something, and that was there was a Labour minister on British TV yesterday saying that what they might have to do is actually reduce disability benefits in the UK in order to be able to fund further our military, for Ukraine. Fairly outrageous statement. This is how far down the hole that we've gone, Warren, that they think they can say stuff like this and get away with it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was always going to be. And this is, as Kissinger once said, being an enemy of America is dangerous. Being a friend of America is absolutely lethal. And of course, they were always going to walk away. So very, very simply, they walked away in Korea. They walked away in Vietnam. They walked away in Afghanistan. They walked away in Iraq. And when they do this, they leave whoever's there holding this odious bag of excrement that they've got to then try and sort out. And of course, the EU swallowed it hook, line and sinker, Sonia.
Yes, they did. Absolutely. And of course, so what we have this week is Starmer meeting Trump. Now, there's already been something of a kind of like public cussing between them that has taken place. Trump was pulling no punches when he said Macron and Starmer failed to stop the war. So they've done nothing. They didn't intervene. And it would appear actually that for the last 3 years rather, all we've done is throw money at the situation rather than attempt to stop it, Warren. That's not a coincidence, is it?
No, it's not a coincidence because BlackRock have plenty of, shall we say, investment in the minerals that are there. And Zelenskyy doesn't have anything to give up. The only thing Zelenskyy has to give up, because the minerals that are underneath, and get this, Sonia, we have it from our French military intelligence source, that very, very simply, because France are going to be meeting them first, Macron is going to be meeting with Donald Trump first, and he will be offering, if he cannot keep the war going, he will be offering all the equipment that has come out of Africa, because obviously France are being kicked out of their mining concerns in Africa, to Trump to get a deal so they can go drilling in the Ukraine, because obviously it's going to take a massive amount of, shall we say, infrastructure to get these minerals out of the soil, not like in eastern Ukraine where they're readily available and the mines are already there. Well, France have the equipment, America have the will, and he's going to go there and pitch that and literally throw his EU partners under the bus.
It's going to get interesting, isn't it? I mean, the thing is I think Zelenskyy knows it's over. Oh, it's all over, bar his crying now, really. It's dragged on for far too long. So I think Starmer is hoping that he can appease Trump in some way. But the problem is Trump already appears to detest Starmer, doesn't he? Because they're just so completely different people.
Yes, he absolutely does. And Starmer is walking along in a winter wonderland of his own, because, of course, he signed a 100-year pact. He's also announcing later on today another package of money to go to Ukraine. So this is in direct contravention to everything that Trump is trying to do. Now, what he's going to try and do is go, we want to put peacekeeping troops inside Ukraine. Will you back us? And the other thing he's trying to do, this is how sneaky Starmer is he wants to put American boots on the ground in airfields in Poland. Then when they fly the jets and make a strike into Ukraine, the Russians will then hit them, which is hitting a NATO country, which triggers Article 5. Now, what you need to know about Article 5, and it's very important, Trump has already said any troops in there will not be covered by Article 5. So, of course, this is England's way or UK's way of trying to involve America in the war. But Article 5 only triggers a discussion. It doesn't trigger immediate action. And Starmer is not very bright here at all.
Got you. Christine wants to know where we can find you. WarrenThornton.com. Brilliant broadcast. Well, as you can hear, very in touch, very knowledgeable, has lots of contacts, which is always great. I want to ask you about something else slightly left of center here. And that is this rumor going around that Donald Trump is somehow a Russian asset from a very long time ago. Called even Anonymous is saying we will no longer be referring to Donald Trump as Trump or Donald. We will be calling him Krasnov. If you're wondering why, blah, 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 scroll down. What do you think about that?
Okay, so very first thing, when it comes to Anonymous and it comes to all this Q stuff, if you go and have a look, when they broadcast something, they're never naming a day, a time, a place. It's always something that can vaguely be attached to it. They turn around and said, prepare, the storm is coming the other day. Well, I could come out and say, I've got a thing called W, batten down the hatches. I mean, it means nothing. Come out with dates, times, places as we do.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Jackie says Anonymous of the CIA. They could well be, Jack. Let's not remove that from the table. And the other interesting thing, of course, is this whole fallout from Trump calling Zelenskyy a dictator. And I noticed the comment that you made to Kemi Badenoch, because she's like, President Zelenskyy is not a dictator. You said you just lost 65% of the electorate with that statement. Why did you say that to her?
Very, very simply, because he is a dictator. Now, very, very simply, the definition of a dictator is somebody who uses martial law to keep control of the country when he is no longer the president of the country. His elections have gone past. Even the Russians held elections while the war was going on. And while we had international observers in those areas, in the very forward areas nearest the war, the Ukrainians were shelling those polling stations, which was quite incredible. And when, of course, they turn around and say, oh, Trump's a Russian asset, there was a document made up, a Steele dossier was made up by MI6 from a guy called Christopher Steele. And it has been proven and been debunked over and over again. And of course, it is the fail-safe that they go to every time they can't win. It's Russia, this, that, and the other. Of course, they blamed Russia on Doge just the other day. Literally, one of the senators came out and within 12 seconds of being asked if Doge were doing a good job, he said, I don't think so. It's Russian and Chinese disinformation.
It's very difficult. I mean, the thing is, it must be quite difficult holding positions such as Donald Trump, for one example, because you actually do have to talk to people, even people that perhaps those who voted you in absolutely hate and deplore. You have to talk with people if you actually want an end to conflict, don't you? But also, Warren, don't you think it's a bit ironic that somebody like Keir Starmer is so outraged that Trump has called Zelenskyy a dictator when Keir Starmer himself has, since he's come in July, behaved like a dictator? He's been controlling the media. He's, sort of cancelled free speech. I mean, there's like secret police. People are being arrested and targeted in their own homes for praying outside abortion clinics, for thinking, for thought crimes. It's like we have our own dictator.
Yes, as Trump said, you have your own problems. Now,
that's right.
You have to remember that they sent 100 Labour Party activists to interfere in the election so that Trump didn't get in.
Exactly.
And the other thing that Starmer is worried about, because there is a major situation that is happening now on the front line. Now, if you think about the front line, the Eastern Donbass, I've always said that they'll want the 8 oblasts and they'll want Odessa, Russia will. Now, they've moved into more of those oblasts. Now, if you imagine a crescent moon, but inverted the other way, so on the eastern side, you've got the crescent. Now, imagine that as a flood of water and a bunch of sandbags up against it. Now, that is breaking in various areas, and they're having to rob those sandbags, which are Ukraine soldiers, to plug other gaps. And of course, they made this bubble in Kursk. And of course, they managed to make an incursion into Kursk, which is exactly what the Russians wanted, because they flooded in there and the Russians have started wiping them out. They've lost 60,000 people, and the Russians have just moved into Sumy, which is in behind these troops in Kursk. And of course, once they go across, they create this bubble, this cauldron, and there are 20,000 soldiers will be trapped in there. And Starmer's desperate to get something done before that becomes a reality in the next week or so.
Oh, it's going to be an interesting week, isn't it? Before you leave us, Warren, what should we be watching out for?
What I'd be watching out for is Starmer basically holding out everything he can. Look for Macron's duplicity. Certainly look for the EU melting down even more. We've got Mark Rutte who's running around trying to buy extra weapons from any country that will hear him. He even tried the other day to buy weapons from Brazil. They cannot match the shells. What look out for the next week is to see very much how that pocket closes and the more panic that sets in from the EU. And the other thing that is really, really important to watch out for, Kellogg and Zelenskyy had a meeting. The situation will deteriorate because Kellogg said it was intense diplomatic discussions. Now, when a diplomat says intense discussions, that means it went very, very badly indeed. So watch out for Zelenskyy going further down the toilet and the Russians to make more and more inroads even quicker in the Donbass.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I knew you'd bring clarity to it. This is Warren Thornton, everybody. You can find him at warrenthornton.com. How often are you doing your broadcast now, Warren?
We broadcast Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. live, and you can see that on X as well. And we also do a Sunday show with Lembit Opik, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Wonderful. And as Charles says, great to have Warren Thornton on Wake Up. It is indeed. We love Warren around here. Thank you so much, Warren. Have a brilliant day. Take good care of yourself. Brilliant insight.
Much.
Truly appreciate that. God bless you too as well. Absolute wonderful. I love Warren. He just brings so much clarity to the insanity of our world. Thank you, Warren. You are a wealth of information, says Cara. Indeed, he is. And how are you all doing in the comments? How are you all doing? Cheers, Warren, says Morrigan. Warren, but still think all is going what as the flu world order has planned. Got you. Many thanks. Insightful, Warren. Love you, Warren, says Charlotte Emma. And Charlotte, how are you today, darling? You're welcome. You're welcome, Phobile. I think that's how I pronounce your name, right? You're very welcome. And yes, so let's bring in our next guest. This is something that everything matters to me. I don't invite anybody on this show unless it matters to me. And this is something that really touched me deeply. I'm sure it touched many of you. And that is Grenfell Tower fire on June 2017, rather, 14th of June. A high-rise flat broke out. A high-rise fire. Sorry, I'm not focusing here. Let me focus. I made a documentary about Grenfell, and it was about the fire that broke out, in which over 70 plus people died. And there's been a very long inquiry about it. And on and off, I've been talking to a man who has a great deal of understanding about the problems there. And all manner of people have been blamed, except actually probably what is actually responsible for the fire, including the firefighters. And I want to welcome in government whistleblower Terry Edge. He's with us today, and I can see him here already. Good morning, Terry. How are you?
Yeah, hi Sonia. I'm very well, thanks. I was listening to that previous piece, which was just fascinating.
Oh, Warren's brilliant, absolutely. Yeah. But as I say, I bring in interesting people. You're another interesting person. You worked in government, didn't you? You worked for the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and you are one of those wonderful things known as a whistleblower. For those who aren't familiar with you, please give us a brief overview of that.
Wow. I never set out to be a whistleblower. I happened to be put in charge of something called the Furniture and Furnishings Fire Safety Regulations, which are for upholstered furniture, and we have the toughest in the world, these regulations. And we believe they worked for many. Well, I say we. I think there were certain people behind the scenes that knew that they didn't work, but I and the government believe they worked. The downside was that to get furniture through these very tough flammability tests, you tend to, almost always use a lot of flame retardant chemicals, which are highly toxic. And that was the nub of it, because
that is exactly the nub of it, isn't it? Because your interest is toxic chemicals in everyday life, right?
That's right. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for Grenfell people. I know a lot of them and I work with them, but that is their battle. But I can talk about what I know about.
Well, let's talk about it, about the cover-up, right? How you say the Grenfell inquiry was a cover-up from day one. Day one. Now, they did the final report, didn't they? September 2024. But you're saying from day one, it was never going to give the true results. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't. Put it this way, it even shocked me, the final report. I predicted that the final report would refer to furniture and flame retardant chemicals, but would not go into any kind of detail. But the two shocks I got was, first of all, the inquiry actually, I'll quote you what the inquiry said in their final report. Right, they said, it is because of that additional evidence, and in particular work done by Professor Purser, we'll come back to him later, that we have reached the conclusion that, save for those who fell from the tower, we can safely find that death was due in each case to the inhalation of asphyxiant gases. Purser agreed that in describing the cause of death, the effects of carbon monoxide in combination with hydrogen cyanide would appropriately be termed asphyxia from asphyxiant gases. As with everything in the inquiry, this is buried in like volume 6 of the final report.
Sure.
7 volumes.
What does that actually mean, though, to the layman and laywoman? What does that mean?
Well, what it means is people actually, the deaths in the tower were caused by toxic fire gases being inhaled, not by flames. But this is true of all fires. Most deaths are caused by inhalation of toxic fire gases. Carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide are released from a fire. Now, what's interesting is that all home fires these days are highly toxic because of all the man-made materials and chemicals that we all have in our homes. However, the largest source of hydrogen cyanide and carbon monoxide in a home fire is upholstered furniture containing flame retardant chemicals. This has been proved all over the place. In fact, the work of the UCLan scientists, Professor Purser, Professor Anistek, Professor Richard Hull, that we'll probably come back to, actually proves this. And, you know, Richard has said off the record that a sofa containing flame retardant chemicals, when it burns, is about 20 times more toxic than a sofa not containing chemicals. However, I went through all 7 volumes of the final report, and there is not a single mention of either furniture or flame retardant chemicals.
Wait. I just want to get this absolutely clear. Former government worker, this is your speciality. You've been through all the volumes of the final report, and there is not a single mention to the fact that upholstered furniture is a contributing factor to these deaths. Have I got that right?
Yeah, the word furniture doesn't appear, and the words flame retardants does not appear.
The big focus was cladding, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that I've got a friend, firefighter Barry Jackson, who has fought very hard to get contaminants, flame retardants on the agenda of the FPU. And he met an MP last week who's very open to what he had to say. And he said, look, it's a playbook. Look, Grenfell's a playbook. And I think he's right. And you all know this. Many, many things are run by the playbook. So yes, right from the beginning, in fact, possibly before the beginning of Grenfell, the real motive was to cover up the fact that the government itself has proved that the furniture regulations do not work. That is on record, it's on their website. And I think I mentioned it last time, in 2019, a government select committee, the Environmental Audit Committee, actually concluded that, you know, I was right, the regulations don't work, and that we should change them immediately to get rid of flame retardant chemicals. And of course, 6 years on, we haven't done that. It's all tied in with Grenfell, because can you imagine if the truth came out that the truth has come out, the major cause of death was toxic fire gases. But if it came out that the major source of those was furniture, not cladding, what would happen? Who knows? Multiple lawsuits.
The problem is we're in danger of repeating it all again unless we change the situation, right? I mean, it sounds simplistic, but that's a reality, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. Yeah, another tower block could go up in flames tomorrow, even without cladding, and the result would be the same.
Talk to us about this reluctance. Why is there this subterfuge? Why is there a reluctance to call it out?
Well, I called it out. Not that it did me much good. You know, a government select committee even agreed with me, but it didn't stop the playbook. It didn't stop the pattern that was set right from the beginning of Grenfell. And sorry, the other shock to me from the final report was, here they are actually admitting that it was a toxic fire. When all the way through Grenfell, the government and the council have denied. They've told residents it was not a toxic fire. You're not ill from toxic fumes and gases. In fact, they actually said, what your illness you're experiencing is the result of pre-existing conditions exacerbated by the stress of the fire. So in other words, it's all in your heads.
Oh, it's all gaslighting, though, Terry.
Oh yeah, well the one who said that, I was at the meeting, a huge meeting, hundreds of people there, Grenfell residents. I've forgotten their name now. Public Health England, Yvonne Doyle. Yvonne Doyle later appeared on TV quite regularly with Boris and what was his name? The guy running Sage. Anyway, saying exactly the opposite. If you die of COVID, no, you've died of COVID. You haven't died of underlying conditions exacerbated by the stress of COVID.
But you've pointed pointed out to me that there's incredible contradictions going on here. You said on the one hand, agreeing that many attending firefighters were later diagnosed with incurable cancers, while on the other, insisting that residents were not poisoned. That is quite a contradiction you've pointed out there, Terry.
Yes, it is. And I mean, just to say, I'm very grateful for you doing this interview because, as usual, the mainstream media has not picked up on any of this.
No.
The one thing that some have picked up on, not the mainstream, but Inside Housing picked up on this, that what you've just said, exactly, that Professor Anna Steck, again, her research paid for by the Fire Brigades Union, we'll talk about that later, concluded that UK firefighters are getting 6 times more cancers on average than normal. And also, Barry Jackson discovered this with his own research, that at least 12 and probably more firefighters that attended Grenfell soon after were diagnosed with incurable cancers. Now, okay, you could argue you can't necessarily make a direct link, which is, of course, what the chemical industry always argue. You can't say this flame retardant gave that person cancer. But when it's in those sort of numbers and so soon after an event, that has been accepted, by the way, generally, that firefighters get cancers because our home fires are so toxic. But at the same time, you're right, they were telling Grenfell people, no, you're not ill. It wasn't a toxic fire. And then here we are with the final report saying it is a toxic fire, but not acknowledging that means that residents will be infected. And my friends at Grenfell tell me that more and more cancers are now appearing, which would make sense.
They've been so let down. You're blowing the minds of our viewers here, Terry. Jan said, let me read this to you. So when testing these chemicals to see if they are okay for stopping furniture catching fire, they didn't test them for the gases they make. Who passes these things for public use? Good question. Who passes these things for public use,
Right,
Terry?
okay. I'll try and be brief on this. Amazingly enough, worldwide, not just in this country, the chemical industry is allowed to do its own testing on a new chemical. Yeah. And put it on the market, right? Which happens all the time. It takes years to prove that chemical is then toxic. I'll give you an example. There's a brominated flame retardant, they're the worst kind, called Deca-BDE, which is still in millions of UK sofas and mattresses. It was banned a few years ago by the EU and the UK as well, because it's so toxic. Now, and also it was banned in America before, a couple of years before that. The flame retardant industry, when they knew there was a ban coming, they worked on a replacement. Now, this replacement is almost identical to Deca-BDE, but it's out on the market replacing Deca. And to get Deca even considered as hazardous took the HSE here an 800-page report and 4 years' work. Right, that's just for one chemical. So your viewer is right. The core problem here is that the chemical companies are allowed to put a chemical on the market with just minimal testing, and then wait for it's a cycle. They all get banned eventually, and no one seems to be able to do anything about this. In America, there was a judge in a court case about all of this who actually said, look, do you all agree that the chemical companies should be they should prove their chemical is safe before it goes on the market, before it gets into children, mother's breast milk, etc., etc. Everyone at that hearing agreed, apart from the lawyers for the flame retardant companies, who said, the first lawyer said, well, I don't think it's as simple a question as that.
I want to drill down on some of the people who perhaps enable this or maybe divert our attention. And it is your opinion that leading fire toxicologists have not called this right. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. I'll try to unpick it, but for a start, all of the toxicology reports for the inquiry were written by professors from UCLan University. Well, one of them is a visiting professor there, Professor Purser, David Purser. He wrote the main toxicology report. He was recommended by another UCLan professor, Professor Anna Steck. I spoke to her about it after he was appointed, and I said, look, I've done some research, and David Purser spent 6 years working for the flame retardant industry, advising the flame retardant industry, and he also signed a petition by one of the big chemical companies to try and get America to reverse its decision to take chemicals out of their furniture. And she gasped out loud when I said this, I think because I'd discovered it. But she said, oh, no, David, he's straight as a die and all the rest of it. So questions I would say is, why did the inquiry give all the work to one university? That's the first question.
Right.
But the second point is, people are complicated, and I think Anna Steck is one of those. I've known her a long time, used to work with her very closely. And on the one hand, she's shown a lot of genuine concern for Grenfell people. But on the other, well, I'll give you an example. Not many people have probably seen this because there's just so many papers around Grenfell. But back in 2022, the inquiry actually asked her, and by the way, here we go again, where the government seems to have given up the idea of tendering for work. They just give it to people now.
Right.
You get this all over,
right.
but particularly here. And they asked her essentially to look into the extent of toxic fumes from cladding and furniture. Now, again, I'm not an expert, and I'm sure you come up against this, Sonia, that you're always dealing with experts that write very complicated reports.
Yeah, blind you with their own personal science. Yes,
exactly. So I would suggest that if anyone looks at that report, what they'll see is that what Anna Steck did was very, very detailed analysis of the cladding, right? And then sure enough, the cladding did produce toxic fumes. But the inquiry used a strange word. They said, can you tell us the extent of toxic fumes from cladding and from furniture? So she chose to interpret that as reach rather than volume. So if you look at her report, she says, yes, indeed, I found traces of toxic fumes in the tower from the cladding. But when she comes to furniture, I'll see if I can actually get a quote here. Excuse me a minute.
No, not at all. But what you've said to me is that this is really contrary to their own work, what they've previously done prior to this.
Oh, yes, exactly, Sonia. I mean, Richard Hull and Anna Steck and a few others at UCLan, they brought out a paper just a few months before Grenfell, which I think is significant, but we won't go into that. But Richard gave a talk on the paper that was coming out in 2017, just a couple of months before Grenfell, at a chemical conference. And what that paper, well, the title actually says it. Hang on. Yeah, the title of that paper was Flame Retardants in UK Furniture Increase Smoke Toxicity More Than They Reduce Fire Growth Rate. That's the title. And that kind of encompasses it. They did a lot of testing. A friend of mine produced the testing materials for them. I wrote a piece for it on the UK regulations and how they basically don't work. And that was due to come out later in 2017. Now, Richard got an email from a guy called Dave Sibbett. Dave Sibbett was a full-time FBU employee working he was their fire safety
Fire Brigade Union, right?
Yeah, the Fire Brigade Union. He was a full-time official there, and I had a long history in my case of trying to make sure that the furniture regulations didn't get changed. I never explained why, but I think we know why. And anyway, he wrote this. He didn't realize that Richard and I worked quite closely together. So Richard actually sent me the email, and he said, "Oh, look, I think you're right about Dave Sibbett." So what Dave Sibbett tried to do is get Richard to drop the paper, not publish this paper, because you imagine that paper potentially was going to be very difficult for the flame retardant industry to deal with, because what it was saying
extremely difficult.
Yeah, UK furniture is stuffed full of chemicals that just increase smoke toxicity and do nothing for, well, they basically, the regulations, as we later found, we already knew at that point, don't work. So in other words, all those chemicals are there for nothing. They're just poisoning people. So he also sent Richard this paper.
I can't believe what I'm hearing here.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can't believe what I'm hearing here. Yes, Patrick, out of the frying pan and into the fricking fire, quite literally. Quite literally. It's actually outrageous what you're saying, because it sounds like a lot of complicity. You say that this inquiry right from the get-go was never going to give us the full truth ever. No. And that is because the picture you're painting to us, Terry, is that people are compromised, that they want to keep away from answers that would create even more problems, i.e. lawsuits, criminal charges, etc., etc. Before you leave us today, talk to me about Matt Rack. He's the ex-leader of the Fire Brigade Union, and you're not happy with him, are you?
Well, fortunately, he's now the ex-leader. He was voted out a couple of months ago. Like many things, the sort of reasons he was voted out was not what's really going on there.
I'm so shocked to hear that.
Well, Matt Rack was a very, very powerful individual, leading the FBU for many, many years. And I wrote to him after Grenfell and tipped him off that he might have somebody working close to him, i.e. Dave Sibbett, who was working, for the chemical industry. And he just kind of brushed me off a bit. But later, my friend Barry Jackson, I mentioned earlier, started up a contaminants group in the FBU, determined to deal with this toxicity issue, which is, giving firefighters cancers. And Rack resisted it for a while, but in the end, he could see that he would have to actually tackle it. So he's quite clever. He took it over, gave it a nice trendy name, Decon, called it. And he hired Anna Steck to do research into, firefighters' cancers, which he did, and made very shocking discoveries. And in the process, he told her, to quote, that he sacked Dave Sibbett for colluding with the flame retardant industry. Now, this is because Anna was getting constantly frustrated, because when she was trying to research firefighter cancers, she kept getting blocked by Dave Sibbett and another ex-firefighter called Mike Hagan, with very strong ties to the chemical industry. Now, move forward a bit. Rack started this thing called Decon, and then, the furniture regulations.
It would appear that everybody involved is all looking in the wrong direction, really, essentially. Well, Terry, just to say this, because obviously we have to wind this up, but just to say this, and that is, there's been an awful lot of settlements, hasn't there? So will we ever get to the truth of what happened at Grenfell, do you think?
Not if you look at the playbook and how it works. I mean, they paid off a lot of Grenfell people. I think it was last year. They very small amounts on the whole, 5,000, 10,000. Some got more, but when you've lost your home and you've got no income, and
right,
10,000 is a lot of money. However, they made them sign NDAs that they wouldn't claim for any sort of further damages against the government or against the council. The cladding companies did the same thing with firefighters, by the way. A lot of firefighters would, my friend Barry was offered 60,000, but he wouldn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
And the cladding companies, to help alleviate your stress, this is to firefighters. As Barry said, well, you don't become a firefighter if you can't handle stress. Mm-hmm. And in return, they wouldn't say anything against the cladding company. So it is going on all over the place. And and just finish on Rack, because the government finally went out to consultation yet again, third time, on the furniture regulations a year and a half ago, and Rack put in the official FBU response. So here was his chance to say to the government, you've got to change these regulations in line with the select committee's recommendations to get rid of flame retardants in furniture. He didn't mention flame retardants. All he said was, you mustn't change these regulations because they're very effective in fire safety, which he knows they're not. And if they did that, of course, it would mean keeping flame retardants in furniture.
It's awful to listen to this in so many respects. So awful, because we're just waiting for it all to repeat again, and that is always the answer, Marcuson. Absolutely. Frankie says this is legalized corruption. I think that's a fair description. Unfortunately, I have to let you go, Terry. But thank you for joining us. I mean, I think you've managed to cover a huge amount, and really
doesn't feel like it, but yeah,
I know, because you've spent so much of your life looking at this. But believe me when I tell you, for our viewers, you've covered plenty. Truly you have. Okay. So don't feel you haven't. Okay, thank you for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Terry Edge, and he's what whistleblowers should be. Take good care of yourself, Terry.
Okay, goodbye, Sonia.
Hope to see you again soon. Take care. I think it takes a toll on people. I really do think this stuff takes a toll on people. Thank you, Terry, says Jan. Horrible stuff, right? Absolutely horrible stuff. We pay for all our problems. Thanks, Terry. Smashed it, says Marco. What a fabulous guest. Thank you, Terry. But you can see it weighs heavily on him. It hurts him. And I get that. I really do. It's horrible stuff. It's horrible stuff to know this stuff. Thanks, Terry, says Stephen. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Terry. Mad it wasn't the cladding. Yes, Fred. But all of everything that we were pointed in that right from the beginning, right? Remember that. But what I was saying before I brought Terry on was, so I made a documentary called Grenfell, A Crime Against Humanity, which is available on YouTube, by the way. And because I'd kind of grown up in my 20s in that area, and I could see that what they were turning it into. And so it went from being a very kind of working class part of London, in West London, to actually being very kind of middle class. You had people like David Cameron move in, Michael Gove move in, and they started to change it. So one side of this area in Kensington was still impoverished and social housing, and the other was extremely wealthy. It's one of the wealthiest boroughs in the UK, and the system is so crooked, Marcuson, so incredibly crooked. And so, and what I discovered was pretty much what Terry is talking about, although obviously not to the degree that he knows and understands how these things work. But I realized that, first of all, they were looking to blame the firefighters. That was one of the things they were looking to do. This whole kind of stay put policy where the firefighters were being told from central office to tell people to stay put and return to their flats. Public notice, nobody has been held to account. There has been no criminal charges so far. And the problem is that because of the settlements that have taken place, there probably won't ever be. And that's the reality. 70 plus people, I think it was 72, killed all 72 victims, including a baby. It's just horrible. Yeah, Christine, I know everybody totally thought it was the cladding. And the problem is that when you kind of look around and you look at your furnishings, you wonder how safe they are. And you now know that the government are not protecting you. And to hear that it's down to the companies to test their own chemicals is just a bit too much for me, frankly. It's all too much to take. Mikey, I've never seen that video, ever. Cass said, long before Grenfell, there was an investigation into the toxic chemicals spraying on mattresses, resulting in many cot deaths. There were indeed. I remember when I was kind of growing up, there was a whole big thing about lead in paint, about mattresses. Where did that all go? It's just gone. And as George said, and you think government worked for us? Not at all. What a ludicrous idea. What a ludicrous idea. Right. I think before I bring in my next guest, I want to play a 1-minute vent. A 1-minute vent. And this is actually something that I think a lot of people will relate to. Let me find it. It's from Gemma. I believe it is from Gemma. It is. It's about the extraordinary cost of school trips. I think this will resonate with a lot of people. And when she says public school, she means state school in the UK. Let's hear it. She's absolutely right, by the way. Let's hear it if I can find it. Where did I just put it now? There it is.
Oh, wake up. So I'm just going to give my little rant, and it's about school trips. So my daughter is in year 7. She is in school in the Northwest. It's a public school. And the cost of school trips, I'm not talking about her trip to rugby to watch women play. I'm not talking about theatre trips. I'm happy to pay for those. You know, they are educational, they're beneficial for her. I'm talking about how school trips are segregating children who are from wealthier families and those on just normal average incomes. I'm talking about the school trip that costs £1,700, the ski trip. I'm talking about the Moroccan experience, which is near £3,000, or the world experience, which is near £8,000. These trips are just out of the majority of people's price range, and it's set to segregate our children from the very wealthy, from the not so very wealthy, and I hate it.
And I hate it as well, Gem. And I'm just wondering where my next guest is. So I'm just sending a message. I absolutely hate it as well. I think it is discriminatory and just frankly, very, very wrong indeed. I was told about another ice age coming when I was at school long ago. Preach, Gemma, says Jackie. It's horrendous the amount they expect parents to pay. It is actually. And when you hear 3,000 and 8,000, who can manage that? And yes, Randy, the problem is the children get used to a pricey lifestyle. Indeed, they do. I paid £1,000 for a school ski trip. They said my son couldn't go if he was not Jenna. I said, stick you grand. What? Not Jenna. What was that? Great rant, says Fred. Indeed. Great rant indeed. I'm hoping that my guest joins me ASAP. Keep the kids with the family. All go together, says Lenticular Cloud. I mean, it's horrible because the way all parents, well, for the most part, I believe that most parents want to, give their children what they weren't able to have themselves. But this puts parents in a terrible position. Very painful indeed. It was like in the 90s too. Ski trip was only for the wealthy. The few of us left behind were in class working. Indeed. Absolutely. And right, I might have to continue because our guest has not arrived. Unless this is her now. No, it's not. Right. Did you bite? Like the price of food and goods, it's supply and demand. Yes, Alice. But you know what it's like, right? Oh, they said they had to be jabbed. Oh, goodness me. They shouldn't be put in such a difficult position and pressure. Highly unfair. Marco, it's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. It's painful as a parent when you can't give your children what you would like to give them. And especially in a situation like that. Which is why when some parents strive to put their children through private school, private education, and they struggle to do it, they can't then afford all the add-ons that children have. But this is a state school Gemma's talking about. Humphrey, it's a break from the indoctrination. It certainly shows the haves and have-nots. Indeed, it does. Right, I am going to have to proceed. I see that lovely Warren came back in our comments, which is always good to see him. Always good to see him. Wasn't it great having him on with us? I do enjoy listening to Warren. Right. What do I want to talk about? I want to talk. This is fun. Can I find an image for this? Thank you, Carey. It's Carey. Is it Carey or Carrie? Carrie wrote to me, said, did you see this? Oh, actually, no, my guest has arrived. So I'm going to pick this story up next. I can see you, Jean. I can see you right there. And she's smiling away. Let's bring her in. Here she is. How are you, Jean?
Hi, I'm all right. Thank you. How are you?
Great to have you with us. Jean Hatchett, you're everything that a campaigner should be. You are absolutely unrelenting. You really are. You just don't, you're not scared to take on any fight when it comes to women's and girls' rights, are you? How long have you been doing this for?
Really? Probably since about 2013, 2012, 13. Yeah, just various things.
Long time. It's a long time. And you pull no punches, which is always wonderful to see because we're in a situation where you have to be like that. You can't be. We saw what happened, right? When people were half stepping. Oh, yeah, I'll call a man a woman. And then it all escalated, didn't it? And suddenly men are in women's spaces. But you do not half step. Right? You do not half step. And it's great. And you're here to talk about it's time for a Taliban. And now I have got this image. Let's bring it up because this is what you're going to be talking about. This is February 25th outside Lord's Cricket Ground in London, NW8. What are you doing there, Jean?
We're objecting to the ECB who are insisting that their English cricket team will play Afghanistan in the ICC Championship Trophy. Now, it's a massive, massive deal. It's a really big deal for the Taliban because they're being allowed to field a team. And it seems that no one is objecting to this. So despite the absolute horrors that they are inflicting on women in Afghanistan, everybody is happy to just play a great game of cricket amongst them and say, well, we can't bring politics into cricket. There are 14 million women in Afghanistan, and they have the most appalling and brutal oppression of their rights at the moment. So they can't access education. They can't speak to each other outside the home. They can't even read aloud in their own homes. They can't be seen through windows, presumably in case a man becomes so excited by the sight of a woman washing up that he can't control himself. They can't have maternal health care. They can't go to gyms. So, there's been more than 1,200 days now since a girl has been able to go to school above a very young age. So this is just horrific. They are being stoned and beaten in stadiums, pretty much like, cricket is played in. So to say that you're divorcing the issue of cricket and it's okay for the Taliban's team to go and play cricket against England, well, that's a national shame for us. We've abandoned those women. We're looking the other way. So we've asked the ECB to boycott. Lots of people have called for that boycott, including politicians and a number of women's rights organisations, and they're ignoring us. They sent me a letter saying they're heartbroken, but they can't help it, which infuriated me. Absolutely. It's just, what do you mean you can't help but play? And then you look at what's happening, and there are huge sums of money involved. It is £120,000 just for turning up, and then, millions if you win. So
is this about money? Is this about money? Miss Sleepflower says you're a warrior woman. She is a warrior woman. And the thing is this only about money? But what alarms me also, Jean, is we hear so little about the plight of the Afghan women. Why is not some great celebrity taking this up as a cause célèbre? That needs to happen. And so what happens is we have grassroots outfits such as yourself having to do the work. You formed the pressure group, didn't you? What is it? 1205 UK. What does that actually mean, 1205?
It means in Germany, it means just too late. And we feel that we're not in time to save women from this appalling onslaught of our rights from men who say they are women. And that is crucially why we formed, is to defend our rights as women from men who say they are women. And we know that they're not. So that's happening on all of these fronts. But this is a sort of an issue we felt that as a group we couldn't not say something about, even though it's not that area. And it's a more traditionally feminist area to stand up for these women who have no rights. We couldn't not do that. This is such a huge thing. These women are being ignored. 2021, the government left. Taliban regime immediately took up place. I think there was a brief portion where people were saying perhaps it would be okay. Well, it's really not okay. They are burying women in the ground and stoning them for accusations of adultery. Well, as any woman knows, we've all been accused of something at some point.
But they never do that with the men, do they? It's always the women. We've talked about this before around here. You know that probably more than anybody. The attack is always on women. Women are always the problem, aren't they? The women with the apple, the temptress. And that is really the problem here. But who is actually making these decisions? So it is actually the governing body, is it? That is making these decisions. Who's making? Yes.
Yes, the Taliban regime. So, there are a number of very powerful men at the head of that regime who have systematically dismantled every single right, every basic human right that a woman would have. So she's head to foot, obviously covered up. But, that's the most basic one. But not being able to speak to other women, not being able to speak out loud in the street, even in her own home. So you can't open a book or a newspaper and read it out loud. This is where women are at, and they can't object. They can't, they can't communicate with each other. Journalists like yourself, Sonia, are being removed at a rapid rate. There will be no female journalists left. So these women have just got no voice at all. So it's our obligation as
I think it is. Some people in the comments are saying, but what about the women in the UK? What are you doing about the women in the UK? Listen, I don't think we've got enough time for me to tell you what Jean Hatchett has done for women in the UK. Okay. So you're not cherry picking, are you? But you're seeing that there is an emergency here and we need an international response to it, Jean. What are you hoping from tomorrow? Go on.
The key thing here is the Taliban gaining international recognition. Now they're doing that really tacitly. This is their team. They keep saying it's not their team, but this is their team. They sit down to dinner with them. The team say, we'll make you proud. So these men are joined together. We don't have any way to sanction the Taliban. We don't have any way to, you can't just go and bomb them anymore or any of the traditional militaristic routes. This is one of the only times we will have to say no to the Taliban. No, until you stop treating women like this, we're going to cut your cricket off at the knees. And it really, really matters to them. They see it as a triumph over the West. So, they see this as a win over us. If they can get their team onto that pitch against our team, that gives them a win with their people and it gives them a win over the West. And that's really important to the Taliban. So this is important. It seems like it's just cricket, but it's not just cricket. It's so much more.
It is, and it's very political, obviously, and I'm so glad that you're going to be there. I think that's really vital and important. And the thing is, I don't think we know the half of what these women are enduring, but also, do you have any idea why there is so little focus on what is taking place with women in Afghan? Because obviously we hear about women around the world, about some of the issues, but there's so little and you literally set out a litany of issues that these women are having to deal with. Even one of them is an infringement on their human rights. But when you say somebody can't see them through a window, that's real.
I know, and they are locked away in this regime, and that's why when people say, "Oh, there's enough for us to worry about here," yes, there is, and I do, and we all do, and we're advocating for all of those rights for women. But this also matters, and this is one of the only times and the only chances we've got to do something about this for them. And so they're watching the cricket teams go out, and those women must be sat at home living lives of abject misery with domestic abuse rife in their homes and thinking, genuinely, no one cares about us. The world does not care about us. How would that feel if that was us, if no one cared about us and our issues here, and that, a government was just taking away everything we had? So we've got to do the small, very, very tiny thing that we can do. And I appeal heartily to the English Cricket Board. Take your men off the pitch. It's $120,000 that you've lost. Take them off the pitch. Just this once, just this one act for women. Wouldn't kill you. But women are dying in Afghanistan. So
they're not going to do it, though, are they?
Well, we'll make a lot of noise, Sonia.
I know you will. So that's tomorrow. That's 4 p.m. onwards. That's Grace Gate entrance, London, NW8 8UH. And you say, join us to say no to England playing against the Taliban's cricket team. That shouldn't be a big ask. It shouldn't be a big ask. It really shouldn't. What do you want to say just before you leave us, Jean?
I'm going to release a number of other things that people can do to support the action and all the way through the match. So holding up a sign just saying, "Dear women of Afghanistan." I've got one. Shall I just show you? So I'm just asking women to hold up a sign that says, "Dear women of Afghanistan," and your own message to them. So at the time of our protest and through the match, it would be really nice if people just so that they can hear us. I think that's the important thing here, is that it's not that we turn anything around. That would be nice, but it's so that those women know we did something.
Just one more thing, because there are some people in the comments saying, what about the women in the UK? I've literally just said this, but I want to go back to you on this, right? And that is, if you were to compare, it's very difficult, but if you were to compare life in the UK for women and life in Afghanistan for women, what would be your comment on that?
I'm here. I can go and stand in the street and I can go and shout whatever I want outside Gracegate. I'm free to go there. They're not. In Afghanistan, they're not. And obviously, I advocate for all the other different feminist issues. Sonia, as you know, I've spoken against women being raped here. I've spoken out against grooming gangs. I'm being accused of never having said anything. Of course, I've said something. I was there in Rotherham in 2013, opposing Sean Wright, the police commissioner. So I've done that. I will continue to do those things.
And all of that. You've done all that.
Men in women's prisons, etc. I will continue to do all of that, but also this.
And I love that. I absolutely love that. Let's not discriminate. I mean, there feels like a sense of discrimination of people like, let them sort out themselves. I mean, honestly, if I was in that position and the rest of the world, women, feminists were saying, let it sort out themselves, I would not consider them feminists at all. And so at least you absolutely live in true to that, Jean. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. Wonderful. That is wonderful sentiment, says Lenticular. Indeed it is. Jean Hatchett, everybody. Feminist campaigner who pulls absolutely no punches. Do not get in her way under any circumstances. Take good care of yourself, Jean. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you, Sonia. Bye-bye.
Lovely to see her. She's a kick-ass. She's an absolute kick-ass. God, you're all kicking off there. I don't understand. I think I saw somebody say, a woman, yes, Miss Sleepflower, a woman sticks her head above the parapet and people go nuts. Some of the comments on here, I know. The thing is, Miss Sleepflower, is I believe in freedom of speech as much as we can allow it on YouTube. And so, you know, I extend that obviously to our live commenters as well. And that's why I wanted Jean to be able to come back. But Jean will have encountered this sort of stuff a million times over. She's a proper professional campaigner, and she's a grassroots campaigner. She's not got some big association backing her, right? If Vola said we need to save our own civilization, and Cameron said you cannot shout what you like in the UK. I see. Well done, Jean, says James Miller. Men and women were created equal, unless you were praying in your head, says Tony. Good point, Tony. Cannot argue with that, Tony. You're absolutely right. Anyway, well done. Well done, Jean. More power to your elbow, lass. Absolutely more power to your elbow. Right, let me go back to Kerry Richardson. Kerry, is it Kerry, or Cowrie? Can't quite work it out, but does it matter? Because the important thing is she said to me, did you see this? Grok. Now, I was talking about Grok on in Friday's show, I think it was. And Grok is Elon Musk's AI, right? And this is funny. This is funny. Let's bring it in if I can find it. I'm sure I've got it somewhere. Yes, here it is. So Grok is one of those, you know, AI. So you ask it questions, and the question asked was, who is the biggest disinformation, misinformation, and lie spreader on X? And the answer is Elon Musk. But what's interesting is after people realized that over the weekend, the answer has now changed, saying potentially Alex Jones. Well, he's also the same, right? And the thing is, this kind of stuff is just, it's funny, right? Like this, his monster is turning on him. Even the monster knows the truth. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. And Elon is not happy. He's Community Notes, which is, so Community Notes was set up before Elon Musk was at Twitter. And the idea is that when people get things wrong, other people can come together and they can add a community note with information that will perhaps correct that original post. Well, the problem is that Musk's now getting community noted on his own platform. And he said, unfortunately, Community Notes is increasingly being gamed by governments and legacy media working to fix this. So Musk is not getting what he wants from his tech, his Community Notes, which you know, has been, it's an important part of X, Twitter. And the problem is it's questioning him. He doesn't like it. He only likes free speech as long as it doesn't actually involve questioning him or what he's about or what he's sharing. And he shares so much disinformation. And that account that I keep talking about that claims to be white, British and patriotic is actually an Indian man based in Dubai on the run. And Rusk, yeah, baby. And Musk shares his junk, absolute junk. And that platform was, that account was saying the other day, in Frankfurt, 100% of serious sexual assault cases are committed by foreign nationals. And Trump was like, really? 100% wow? No, not really 100% wow. If you look at the figures, that's so ridiculous, selective, cherry picking nonsense. And that is dis and misinformation. Both are deeply unpleasant. And there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about Musk's new efficiency drive. And Donald Trump had put out a message on social media saying, Elon is doing a great job, but I would like to see him get more aggressive. Remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make greater than ever before. MAGA. And so what happened was Trump then responded saying, consistent with President real Donald Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Who has received this email? Hundreds of thousands of government workers, including some judges, court staff, prison officials. And it's from the Office of Personal Management. And with the following instruction, please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. Well, let me tell you something. Some people are not having it. And one of them is Kash Patel, who's now obviously, he's now been confirmed. Tulsi Gabbard as well. So, that's intelligence. And they're not interested. They're not having it. And Kash Patel is the FBI director, and both he and Tulsi Gabbard are telling their staff to essentially ignore it. In fact, Kash Patel wrote, FBI personnel may have received an email from that office requesting information. The FBI, through the office of the director, is in charge of all of our review processes and will conduct reviews in accordance with FBI procedures. When and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. For now, please pause any responses. And so the thing is obviously Elon Musk, high on ketamine or whatever he's high on these days, because the other day when he was at the conservative conference, he was definitely under the influence of something with his sunglasses on and wielding that chainsaw that was given to him by Malel from Argentina. And I keep asking who is auditing Elon, because it seems that something rather dodgy is going on regarding him and his companies in the US. And the Justice Department, for example, is to drop a discrimination case against Elon's SpaceX. Well, that is one of the departments that Elon has targeted. There's issues here. I think very serious conflict of issues taking place, very serious conflict of interest. And it's not okay. Whichever way you want to look at it, couldn't possibly be okay. What's going on? So meek and mild. It's all a bit too theatrical to trust. Kash, says Mel's. Do you like Kash? Kash Patel strikes me as somebody who's not going to take any nonsense from anybody. And the same with Tulsi Gabbard. At this moment in time, I have time for both of them. James says Musk is drunk on power. He's drunk on something, mate. And did you see, by the way, that Musk wants to pay $2,760 a month for 3 of his children? This is the world's richest man. What does that equate to? That's probably less than $2,000 a month for 3 children. It's disgusting. To our knowledge, Musk has $393 billion and he wants to pay $2,000 a month, 3 of his children. It's disgusting. Well, Blue Nomad, there's a good question, right? How does he run all his companies plus spend all day on X? Well, I'm starting to wonder whether Musk is some kind of composite character, frankly. Greg, Tulsi is WEF. She is WEF. But I want to hope for the best. She certainly made some great starts. She's made some great starts. She said some interesting things. Squidgy said he is not the world's richest man. Well, that's what they titled him. I don't believe he is either. But what's interesting is that the chances are the world's richest man will not tell you he's the world's richest man, right? Because very, very, very wealthy people behind the scenes don't want you to know about them. So I do think that Elon Musk is, to a certain degree, a puppet. His brain chip malfunctioned. This is, if the original Musk, Warren Buffett, got you indeed. Anyway, it's all very bizarre. They're not having it. They're not taking his madness of what he's saying. And interestingly, it is interesting that Elon Musk Tesla is losing sales now. And a picture was captured in New York. I don't know if I've got it here to show you, but it's got a swastika all over it, because people are just kind of like, people are sick and tired. People are sick and tired of him. A lot of people believe him to be a Nazi. You might not be one of them. I wonder if I've got that image that I can show you. Let me just see. I just think it's an interesting image. Oh, maybe I haven't. It's probably right in front of me and I'm missing it completely, because that happens, right? But here it is, actually, swastika Tesla. And I think this is going to happen more and more. So, but what is interesting, and I didn't realize this, But the Tesla Cybertruck is actually banned in Europe. And it's due to its design not meeting European safety regulations. But that's an image of one of the Teslas in New York, and someone has swastikaed it. Ban them. You pay out without them. What's that? Oh, NDAs. Hey, NDAs. Yes, Blue Nomad. It's interesting. Interesting stuff indeed. Right. You beautiful people. Diddy's lawyer has quit. This is interesting. Sean Diddy Combs, of course, is well, he's waiting all manner of things at the moment. He's dealing with a torrent of civil suits, federal sex abuse racketeering case. And one of his lawyers, Anthony Rico, filed a motion in New York's court on Friday, notified the judge of his intent to withdraw, adding it had followed discussions with Combs' lead counsel. And interesting, Combs' lead counsel is the husband of Luigi Mangione's lead counsel, right? The Agnefilos, their husband and wife team. Anyway, and so what Anthony Rico said, although I have provided Sean Combs with the high level of legal representation expected by the court, under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs. What came out? What came out? Something came out. Look, Anthony is only one of the lawyers from Combs's team. Combs has a substantial, larger legal team that's working to defend him against accusations of rape and sex trafficking. Combs has maintained his innocence throughout, even as more alleged victims have come forward. And a lot of these people are outlining a pattern of abuse, which is incredibly similar. And that was before it was put into the public domain. And that's one of the ways that prosecutors know they might be onto something, is if people, survivors, victims, whatever you want to call them, if people come forward and they are able to demonstrate a pattern of abuse that is similar with another independent witness, that is then often taken very seriously. Lawyers for Combs have recently argued that his prosecution is in part racist, right? They've said no white person has ever been the target of a remotely similar prosecution. I don't think that's necessarily true, is it? Is that true? Marco, I want to address Justin Bieber in a minute. And I don't think that's true. And I think people are really tired of this, actually. The reality is that Sean Combs became very influential, very rich, and for holding these so-called white parties that when the kind of official time ended about 1 o'clock, they then had inner sanctums where lots of things went on, including allegations of underage people, children involved in this, being chosen from tables. Some of the allegations are. Jackie, everything is racist. Stop being racist. Exactly, Weinstein, Rachel. Unless we're now saying he's black, because that would be ridiculous, right? We are tired of it, says Abster. We are tired of it. Swastikas. That's a good one, Soul Sound. I've got that. But I just think that's interesting. When somebody quits a defense team, and that's going to be a good money earner one way or another. It doesn't matter because Combs is very rich. Very good money earner. And actually, I think it's only one of his, it might be his only black representative as well who has quit. And I actually looked at him and I thought he looked a little bit like Nation of Islam, the way he was dressed, but I could be completely wrong. And I don't want to. Wef is very white. Did he do it, right? I get feeds from left things and a teenage leftist, says Lenticular Cloud. I got you. So I think there's more going to come out about that. But the fact that he said that he couldn't in any circumstance continue suggests to me that this lawyer has become privy to information which is contrary to his client's case. Who's WEF again, says Morrigan. They're all bloody WEF. They're all WEF. World Economic Forum. That's who they are. And this is curious as well. Thank you, Mark Porritt. Mark is a regular contributor around here. Said another person found in a body of water. What the heck is going on? Indeed. Now, this is interesting. Interesting story of an event from, actually, it was October 2024, but the police have only just released it. Right, the public only know about it now. And police have put out an appeal for information about a man found dead in Clearwan Reservoir in mid-Wales. And this man was wearing a wetsuit usually used by triathletes and open water swimmers. All police know is that he is a white man, aged between 30 and 60 and was wearing a Zone 3 agile wetsuit. Now, it's weird because the police cannot work out how the man got there, right? He was found last October, but as I say, they've only just put out the information. So that's November, December, January, 4 months. They've waited to put out information about this man, which is interesting. They've done extensive forensic tests, extensive inquiries, searches and appeals for information, but they've never really put this out to mainstream media. And what happened was a walker, he called 999, having seen a body in a wetsuit floating in a remote reservoir. And they say when you drown, it's like falling asleep. How do they know this? And what's going on? And so it's curious because police now are asking for any information about this most unusual death because there's no evidence of his personal belongings or an abandoned car or a bike. None of that was ever discovered at the time. So no clothes, no vehicles found. The nearest bus stop is about 4 hours walk away. And police say it is unlikely that this man walked there in his wetsuit. What do we think about that? What do we think about that? It just is weird. It's so weird. And actually, I was, please forgive me, I don't look at my Instagram messages very often. Please forgive me, I hardly ever look at them, but I did see a message from a viewer. Let me see if I can find it. Joanne. And this reminds me, this is about Nicola Bulley. I apologize, I've only just seen this, Joanne, but it's very interesting. Joanne said, I live around 25 minutes away from where Nicola Bulley supposedly went missing. And I thought straight away there was something not right about the whole thing. I have visited the site a few times. And do you know what? She got the last plot in the graveyard of the church she is supposedly buried. There are no graves in there, 100 years old. And I don't believe there are graves in there that are 100 years old. And I don't believe for 1 minute that they already had that plot secured. Something not right about it all. And I do think that we are all reaching the point where we are having to ask what on earth has happened. We're hearing so much about deaths in water, so much that it is deeply concerning to me. And I really don't quite get what the deal is. I really don't. It's very strange. 275. Wow, Frankie, is that right? 275 UK water-related deaths every year on average. It's really weird. It really is. It is odd. Yes, sail away. That's triathlon does involve running. Could be a training accident. Interesting. Yep. Just odd, isn't it? Right. I often talk about synergy and synchronicity and how they manifest in my life, right? Well, it happened again on Saturday and it was so weird. For no apparent reason whatsoever, I suddenly thought about the 16-year-old girl who had been a famous page 3 girl in one of Rupert Murdoch's rags, The Sun. I felt the same feeling, I felt the same feeling of revulsion in that moment as I did back in the 80s when it first happened. Then I looked it up to refresh my memory with the details, and I swear I nearly passed out. The anniversary of that happening was the 22nd of February. Saturday was the 22nd of February. Out of nowhere, I suddenly thought, there was no prompt. There was nothing in the newspapers, nothing online. Out of nowhere, I suddenly thought of this 16-year-old who had been used and abused by her father, by newspapers, by Rupert Murdoch, grim page 3. Yeah, it was so weird. Very weird indeed. Thank you, Fred. We appreciate that. Sam Fox indeed mails, and I want to look into it. So the fact that I thought of that particular event on the actual anniversary of it made me acknowledge the wavelength it came to me on. And that told me to reflect on that event with you, my wonderful audience, because it will also tell us so much about how we got to where we are in our world, where the sexualization of young people has been normalized and the objectification of them has added to our destabilized society. And that was indeed Sam Fox. And I think I've managed to sufficiently edit this picture, but this is Sam, young girl, holding an image of her on the page 3 of The Sun, which was famous for topless females. And the headline was Sam 16 quits A levels for ooh levels. Absolutely disgusting. Someone just walked over your grave, Morrigan. What's that? I find it ironic. Sam Fox turned out to be a lesbian. Yes, so many men were disappointed, although a few were even more excited. She did indeed. She was 16. She was 16. It was absolutely mind-boggling that a parent would encourage their child. Yes, Frankie. So what happened was her mum took pictures of her in her underwear and sent it in to a competition to find a page 3 model. Sam had placed second in a Sunday People amateur modeling contest. But this kind of reminds me of the whole kind of Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips thing where their parents are involved. I'm just going to be really straight here. And that is, when parents are involved in the sex work of their children, we really should be examining what's going on in that home. Because I asked my daughter what she would think if I took sexy pictures of her. She said, "Oh, it's disgusting, Mum." Yes, disgusting. There's something really wrong with parents who take sexy pictures of their children and then flog them to newspapers or whatever. Remember what Kris Jenner did? She flogged the sex tape of Kim Kardashian and Ray J. And that's how the Kardashians became famous. Yes, blind hip shaker they were, but there was laws against it, right? So poor Sam Fox, I do feel sorry for Sam. She had a hard time, actually. But during her time on page 3, she became one of the most photographed British women of the 1980s. She was named page 3 Girl of the Year for 1984, 1985, and 1986. She insured her breasts for 1 million. She left page 3 in 1986, age 20. To focus on her pop music career, releasing such gentle gems as Touch Me, I Want Your Body, because she's been highly sexualized. In 2008, she was voted the top 3 page model of all time. And as I say, her mother sent in the images. And a photographer, this is horrible, but I'm going to repeat it so you know exactly the environment this kid was in. A photographer told her she had the face of a child, but the body of a woman. So yes, as I say, her mother took the pictures. Her father became her manager. And I don't care what anyone says. It's unhealthy and unnatural for parents to be involved in selling their children for sex work. Full stop. Full stop. And Sam had a big public falling out with her father. Her parents separated in 1988. Her father, who abused alcohol and cocaine, managed her career prior to 1991. In that year, he assaulted Sam. He left her with cuts, bruises, and 2 broken ribs. Following that incident, Sam hired accountants to trace over 1 million that she believed he had embezzled from her accounts. Yes, some dad, Squidgy. Some dad. Yes, Jackie, it reminds me of Brooke Shields as well. I remember doing a deep dive in Brooke Shields. And of course, what was it? The Blue Lagoon? Where she was highly sexualized at the age of 10. The images of her, absolutely disgusting. And I'm trying to remember who took them. Very famous photographer. Yes, it's horrible. What sort of monster of a parent would allow this? Remember it well. It's so sad. So sad. She sued her father, was awarded a $363,000 court settlement in 1995. And, you know, in terms of like the legal age, after Sam Fox, it was raised to 18 for topless shots, right? And the slime balls who put her on page 3, well, we must remember the slime balls. Here's one of them, Kelvin McKenzie. What a slime ball. He was the editor of The Sun. Of course, ultimately, Rupert Murdoch would have given the go-ahead for this, but Kelvin McKenzie came to The Sun and he made it even more debased than it was. And Kelvin McKenzie is truly one of our most reviled editors. Truly he is. And I mean, he's done so much, including lying about what took place at Hillsborough when people died at a football match. And he said the truth. Some fans picked pockets of victims. Some fans urinated on the brave cops. Some fans beat up PC giving kiss of life. Lies. That was on the front page of The Sun. You can't buy a copy of The Sun in most places in Liverpool now. And in fact, a Liverpool newspaper mentioned The Sun last week and they won't even spell out the name of The Sun. They put Sun *N. Yes. I think it did toughen her up, Mel's. And he reminds me of Max Clifford. Interesting there. And so obviously that was one of the single biggest, most controversial moments in Mackenzie's tenure as editor at The Sun. But I will never forgive him for putting a 16-year-old child on page 3. I can't stand Kelvin McKenzie. He blocked me on social media. He nicked one of my pictures. I took a picture of somebody who was campaigning against ULEZ, and on his van it said it had about a sticker to do with Sadiq Khan, and it said something like, if Carlsberg produced anchors, W at the front. And I took that picture, and Kelvin McKenzie, being the type of newsman he is, took my picture, reproduced it without any credits, right? These are disgusting people. But yes, Sam Fox, I think she ended up becoming quite tough about it. And yes, indeed, as our commenters have said, she turned out to be more interested in women than men. And who can blame her? Because actually, and the reason I say that is she was surrounded by men who just abused her constantly. Kelvin McKenzie is in part one of the reasons why British media has so much of a bad reputation. People like Kelvin McKenzie, people like Piers Morgan, they have made our media absolute trash. Kelvin McFilthy, as Private Eye called him. Yes, James. And wait, what's that? Bridie, what's that? Was that Brooke photographer, Gary Gross? Was it 1975? Oh my God. Lisa, all these predatory, disgusting men in power. Yeah, they're absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. After the Hillsborough inquiry, Kelvin McKenzie apologized for that front page, but it's a bit late by then. People are devastated. People have lost their lives. And what you're doing is actually turning on the victims. And you're using what was then the biggest selling tabloid, the biggest selling newspaper in England, in the UK, and you used it to attack the victims of Hillsborough. Absolutely shocking. Dirty old devils rule the world, says Susan, and we're here to take them out. Yes, we are. By the way, everybody, I'm not being funny, but you know, recently that Black Hawk down, that collision, right? Why is there suddenly a plethora of games and films being advertised? I noticed on YouTube before one of my programs, they were advertising Black Hawk Down the game, and on Netflix have just re-released Black Hawk Down as well. He's so unwholesome. And yes, thank you. All the people who have contacted me about the digital and data bill. I will be bringing on somebody to break that down. But just briefly, the idea is this, is that it's a bill to make provision and access to customer data and business data. Well, now the thing is, we've got enough problems there, haven't we, with Apple, which I do want to talk about. That's right, Markson, the one with the female pilot that they made a big deal about hiding and then pushed her forward, right? Got that. Yes. It's remote warfare training us to pilot drones, says Morrigan. The thing is, all this stuff that a lot of my viewers say years ago, they would have just been seen as cranks. But the reality is we know what's going on now. We know what's going on. And I just wanted to talk briefly about, because I'm not going to cover the digital bill because I don't know enough about it. But I want to bring in somebody who can break it down for me, or at least I want to be able to spend some time going through it. But I do know that it's now at a fairly advanced stage in Parliament. So we must be careful. We must be careful indeed. And this AI thing, by the way, very disturbed about that. So we're hearing, of course, that Apple has essentially complied with what the British government want. Now, this is not happening around the world. So already Apple is singling out British customers, okay? And so the British government want to be able to get access to our data. So if you're in the UK and you use an iPhone, there are now items that the British government can get access to on that. And that includes your device backup, your messages backup, Siri shortcuts, voice memos. I use a lot of voice memos. I would not want the government having access to that. Your notes, your photos. Thank you, Christine. Data breach. Yes, it's awful. It's horrendous. But I often talk about around here how I'm an Apple fan. Well, I have to get a new phone because mine is giving up the ghost. I've had it now for about 6 years, giving up the ghost. And I'm going to be, the plan is to be going to the Lucy Letby Thirlwell inquiry. I think it is 2 weeks today. There's a protest taking place, and I am hoping to be able to do a live stream, Monday's live stream from outside the Lucy Letby Thirlwell inquiry. That's what I'd like to do. And so I need new equipment for that. Yes, I do. Apple keep locking me out of my iPad because I won't use their cloud. Yes, morons still buying the sun, says Martin, but not in Liverpool, though. Government is in your back door, Markson. Absolutely. So they've lost me. They've lost me because this shows us that Apple are prepared to give government some control. And the fact is, as I say, Apple are not doing this all around the world. They're just doing it to us, and it's wrong. Boycott, boycott, boycott. They will have to get a warrant. Snowden movie told us this, Squidgy. It did. It absolutely did. We knew it was on the horizon. So reality. That is the reality. So yeah. So if anybody who knows anything about good tech could advise me on a decent smartphone, I need a smartphone because I need to be able to access the internet. I need to be able to do live streaming, but I don't want it to be Apple. So if anybody would like to advise me, I would truly appreciate that. I really would. Now, our lovely Shin took some videos on Friday. And I think what's interesting, I'm going to play both of them. And this is geoengineering. And we talk about geoengineering because nobody else does. They already have access to all your data. They're just passing. What's that? Yeah, Chris, they're just passing in law to make it legal. That's right, Chris. I mean, that is the reality. But the fact that it is being legalized is a problem for me. It is a problem for me. So thank you, Shin. So Shin sent us this from France. And, well, let's hear her out. Let's hear what she's got to say.
I see that bit. Oh, my goodness. Hidden by the cloud. Look at them chems. There, some they prepared earlier.
Indeed, Shin. And then this is later.
Same place. Well, evening, it's 6 o'clock. So it's 5 o'clock in England, but 6 o'clock here. Look at that. That's where the chemtrails were. Look at that. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but the temperature, it was -2 2 days ago, and now it's 17 degrees. Insane.
Insane indeed. Thanks for filming that, Shin. And Shin, of course, is one of our mods. And I truly appreciate that because we often get questions around here of, you know, what does the sky look like once it's been chemmed? Or what does the chemtrail look like? What does the contrail look like? Is it same in Belgium, Michelle? Awful. Yep. The government can track Android phones as well. Can somebody please tell me what I could get? Give me some advice. Oh, this is Utrecht, the Netherlands. Sorry, Shin. Not France at all. It's in the Netherlands. How is it, folks? Don't get it with these chemtrails. Shiniola. My neighbor still won't believe it. I don't know what to tell you, mate. I don't know what to tell you. It's appalling. Yes, Utrecht. Thank you. Sorry. Forgive me. Right, Vicky, what's Vicky saying? While I support your last guests, I hate it being labelled feminism. As a woman, I think feminism was designed as a psyop to get women out of homes away from bringing up their own children. And I take your point. I think that, Vicky, and that's why we do Wake Up Around, is that we allow for difference of opinion. And I've actually never described myself as a feminist, by the way, and not least because I've often struggled with the behaviors of some women and kind of like purity spirals and everything. But I do support what Jean is doing. And I do support a lot of these grassroots groups. They really do need support. They're there for all of us to create a better society, wherever that is. And does it really matter where it is? But again, difference of opinion around here is absolutely welcome. No, I am not getting a ham radio. I buy a Nokia brick, Sonia. That's the only way you'll be safe, says Marco. I had a Nokia brick, 1992, I think it was. I was running a company called Go for the Juggler, which was a record label and a management company. And in between being a music journalist, as you do, juggler. And my first mobile phone was a Nokia brick. Yeah, it was. Matrix. Chemtrading knows no bounds, says George. Indeed. Right. We are approaching the end of our show. Thank you to our donators as ever, to Jade, to Natalie, to Colin, to Wilson. Thank you all so much. However you donate to Wake Up, it all goes in the same pot, whether you buy me a coffee, whether you give me a super sticker on here, whether you're a patron on Patreon, whatever you do, it all goes in the Wake Up pot and enables us to keep growing. In fact, it enabled us to do a third show. So it's going somewhere. And I'm very grateful to you all. And please, can we get to 100,000 subscribers? Like, share, subscribe, people. Right? Just found you. Sending love from Lincolnshire. Hello, Nurse Janice. How are you? Thank you, Evolution of Self. Thank you. Always goes quick, Stephen. Always goes quick. And I want to end on a slightly different note today, by the way, kids. I really do. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that very much. Hey, Craig, great Only Cans last night. Please, everybody, mods, can you give us an Only Cans link for the live chat. Only Cans last night. Great looking at that. Just did a thumbs up. Wonderful. And please like, share, and subscribe with Only Cans. I very much, I love the two that run Only Cans. And I think that they are people with decent integrity around the cases they cover. And in particular, Madeleine McCann. Lenticular Cloud just likes human rights. I hear you. Thank you, Marshall. Love to you. And thank you, Morrigan. And She-Bear is in the house. Thank you. So I want to end on a slightly different note. I put out messages on social media yesterday saying I want to hear a good news story for Wake Up. And I didn't get one. I literally didn't. When I put out public requests, and it's usually, what do you think about giving money to Ukraine? Or what do you think about the Middle East? I can get thousands of comments. I did not get one comment telling me good news. What is that saying about our world? Gemma is just in, but we'll watch from the beginning. Yes, we'll check out Only Cans. Indeed. So I want to hear a good news story because I think that's important. And I don't always want to just end the show in the same way because I'm not somebody who likes routine and I don't like things to be samey. So I found a good news story. And it touches my heart. So let me bring in the star of this good news story, if I can find her. Where are you? Let me find you. Here she is. This is the star of my good news story, and she is Daisy the dog. Daisy the dog was stolen from her family's garden 7 years ago. Now, we have a lot of dog lovers who watch this show. I know that for a fact, and that includes me. I cannot even begin to imagine how heartbreaking it would have been to have experienced that. And for 7 years, they kept looking. They never, ever gave up, right? They never gave up. They tried everything. They put out appeals, petitions. The police were looking, RSPCA. They did everything they possibly could to find Daisy the Labrador, who was abducted from her Norfolk garden in November 2017. And what happened was that Daisy was found this month by an RSPCA inspector, and it happened just by chance. Just by chance. She was more than 200 miles away in Somerset, and she was actually found during a routine investigation. And Rita Potter, Daisy's real owner, is, as you can imagine, is completely beside herself with joy. She said, we kept a photograph on the mantelpiece and would look at it every day, thinking of her and where she might be. And I just absolutely love that. Daisy's theft actually made national headlines in 2017. So it was quite a high profile situation. 200 miles, Jack. But I haven't got to the worst part yet. And that is poor Daisy was stolen to be a backyard breeder. So Daisy was used for sort of industrial breeding, which is just so horrible, right? And the Lovable's got happy tears. I love it too. And actually, the person who ended up with Daisy is not the person that they're holding responsible for stealing Daisy. This person bought Daisy in good faith, right? Never give up, Marcuson. Absolutely. There are so many good little things every day, and we have to remember them. We do. And the thing is, and the new owner said that she'd only had Daisy for a few years and agreed to sign the care of Daisy over to the RSPCA, who promptly returned Daisy to the Potters. And also the Potters had started a petition, the pet abduction bill, which was actually passed last year. So this means a lot, but Daisy has returned to home. And this is the bit that gets me, because I've been through this, is that the Potters say they're so glad Daisy is back home, because even, I could feel emotional, because even though she's like in some of the last years of her life, and she's struggling now because elderly dogs do often struggle, they're so glad she's returned home so that they can give her kind of like the best end days in her life. I just love that. Is it? Sally said that's so heartbreaking, but so wonderful. She's home. Fur babies are life. Absolutely lovable. Absolutely. And I just thought, you know what? I thought, let's end on a good news story today, because I think sometimes that's really important to do. And my quote is actually reminds me of what Marcuson had just said. Thank you all for being here. Absolutely shameful, Mary, but the fact that she's returned home is so wonderful. Mrs. Potter said, we know she is elderly now and has health issues, but whatever time she has left, she will now be surrounded by lots of love and attention. Welcome home, Daisy. Great way to end. Yes, Peter, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leni. Thank you, Lenticular Cloud. Thank you, all of you for being here. Thank you. There is hope. Never give up. We once lost our cat. And this was in Gloucestershire. We'd gone home for Christmas. I'd taken the 2 cats with me. This was years ago, and we lost one of our cats. And I was so beside myself. And we found him, actually. We found him, Zoomy boy. We found him 2 weeks later. He was kind of camping out at an old people's home at the back of my family home. And he was kind of like, he's getting scraps from them and everything. But that was awful 2 weeks because you love them so much. So for Daisy to be returned after 7 years, I think is an absolutely wonderful end to our show. Thank you. My biggest fear is losing a pet outside. If anybody stole my dogs, they will be back on my doorstep in an hour. They're a pain in the ass. Oh, oh, really? Is it like that? I often say that about, the thing is, I do absolutely love our lovely, as I've told everybody, she makes me laugh every day. She is we adopted her from Romania. She's a street dog, but she's as different to my Bliss Bub. My Bliss Bub was my little Westie. And our lovely is as different to my Bliss Bub as you could possibly get. And I often say to people, right, nobody's going to steal my lovely, but not least because lovely is a guard dog. So if anybody approached her in the wrong way, I do not welcome their chances. I really don't. The power of love. Love is law. Indeed it is. Right. On that note, we're going to end today's show. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all of your contributions to our show. And I am going to end on a quote about never giving up. Never give up. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse. But the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. Oh, yes, indeed. Take good care of yourself. Have a wonderful Monday and Tuesday. I will, of course, see you on Wednesday when who knows what we will cook up this week. One of the stories that I'm hoping to cover is to do with the British riots and somebody behind the scenes regarding that important story. Thank you, Sid. I appreciate that very, 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 very much. And thank you to you all. Have a wonderful Monday. I will see you Wednesday. Take good care of yourself. And thank you as ever to my 2 wonderful mods. Love you all. See you Wednesday, people.